Welcome back to Monday Night Live.
An entrepreneur that has been disrupting the lead generation industry.
Introducing your host, Nathaniel Bibby.
LinkedIn marketer of the year. Name's Nathaniel Bibby.
Welcome to Monday Night Live. If you're new here, I'm Nathaniel Bibby. Over 500 million in sales for our clients using LinkedIn strategies alone. Monday Night Live is your weekly dose of LinkedIn strategies, marketing tips, and business advice to get you to the next level. Monday night at 6 p.m. Perth time. So drop in the comments and say what's up.
Monday Night
Welcome to Monday Night Live. Let's go. How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Drop in the comments and say hello. A bit earlier today, 1 p.m. in Perth. Good to see some early arrivals here. Nico and Gary, welcome. Who else we got? Drop in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. Okay. Right-yo. Just checking the connection here. Drop in the comments, say hello, guys. I'm just going to improve my connection a little bit, and then we'll get cracking. All right, here we go. Okay. That should make it a little bit better. All right, so financial services, right? If there's one industry that if you can crack it, you can crack any industry, right? Because it's the hardest one to crack. I mean, it's about being trust-based, right? Trust-based industries are the hardest ones to take from a stranger on the internet to a client, right? So most financial firms, they think that they have a LinkedIn strategy, and they don't. Even the big ones, the big boys, because what worked 2 years ago, it doesn't work anymore. And you know, everyone's chasing the latest hacks, AI. The firms that are actually winning, they've doubled down on one thing. Drop in the comments if you know what that one thing is. It's trust. It's trust. What we're going to be talking about today is trust. You know, that's what it comes down to, how to build trust really fast. So this webinar or this live is for financial professionals who are ready to stop lending in, start generating 20 to 40 qualified leads a month, and finally turn LinkedIn into their number one inbound channel. Now, I will say this is relevant for anyone in professional services, accountants, investment bankers, wealth managers. If you're in real estate investment, this can work exceptionally well if you do the right target market. If you're capital raising, I'm going to show you some examples of how we've raised a lot of money in a short period of time from strangers on the internet. I'm going to show you an example of a client where we raised $1 million in 30 days. Didn't have a presence on LinkedIn when we started. $1 million raised within 30 days. Phenomenal result. And you hear about these stories all the time in the online and in the newspaper about, you know, someone's done this huge capital raise just by somebody they met on LinkedIn. It's amazing, these stories, right? But very few people, even when they have that success, actually had a strategy behind it. It kind of just happened. But success leaves clues, right? And you can come up with a system and then you can scale it. You're going to get some industry benchmarks. Like I'm going to give you some stats, what sort of figures you should be aiming for, some real strategies. I've been doing LinkedIn marketing for 12 years. And I decided when I started that I was going to focus on the financial services industry, mainly because it was so expensive for that industry to market on the likes of Google with AdWords and SEO. Basically, anywhere you wanted to advertise in financial services was expensive because you're competing with the banks and they can just afford to spend so much to acquire one client. Whereas, you know, networking and word of mouth could work exceptionally well. And LinkedIn was just that on steroids. So I thought this is the industry where I can add the most value, right? And it's going to be worth the most to them. And within the first year, I signed up BT Financial Group, which was, you know, a division of Westpac, and they had about 700 dealer groups. And so I used to fly around the country every few months, training all of these smaller financial services firms that sold Westpac products. And then some of them would come on board and sign up as clients with me. And so I got a really good understanding very early on of how the financial services industry works. I've since worked with the biggest hedge fund in the world, Capital Group, Shaw and Partners, Euros Hartleys, Crown Financial, Crown Accounting, Western Union. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so I've got a lot of experience in this industry. But what I will tell you is it's the same thing for any trust-based industry. What people make the mistake of doing is they go in there and they're like, I'm going to give you this complimentary financial review of your investments and stuff. The problem with that is there's no trust, right? You're giving something, there's no value there because they don't already see you as an authority. So what we're looking to do is indoctrinate people before we start approaching them and building a relationship. All right. Who else have we got on the call, guys? We can see Nico and Gary pretty active. Where's the rest of the crew? Have I made the time too early? There we go. Brenda's in the house on YouTube by the looks of it. Welcome from Melbourne. Now, if you are new here, I'm Nathaniel Bibby. Welcome to Monday Night Live. We're building the biggest weekly show on LinkedIn, and we break down what's working right now in marketing, content, lead generation, so you can grow faster. Tonight's episode obviously is tailored for the financial services industry. So if you're in wealth, insurance, lending, broking, funds management, investments, capital raising, then you got to be wanting to spend your time on LinkedIn. You don't want to waste your time on TikTok and Instagram and all the rest of it. This is the best channel for you to be on in 2025. You're in the right place. So what we're going to be diving into, oh my goodness, we've got the guest of honor here, Michelle Bibby. I'm putting you on the screen. There she is. Hello, Nigel. How are you, mate? Good to see you here. So we're going to talk about why trust is the real currency and how to build it online. A lot of people don't have a strategy behind building trust. They just think, that it's just going to happen naturally, which is partly true, but it's only a small portion of it. The benchmarks and KPIs that actually matter, and the 5 biggest mistakes financial firms make on LinkedIn, they're all making these mistakes, even the big companies. The systems that we use to generate hundreds of leads per month, what to post, how often, and how to sound human, what days, what times, that kind of thing. And also compliance. We have to talk about compliance in the finance industry, right? So how to stay compliant, because a lot of companies do this wrong. They just tell all of their team what not to do, right? And it becomes too complicated. They don't do anything. So tonight's episode is not sponsored by Condo, but I have got 1 month free of Condo to give actually everyone that's attended. So I'm going to give you that at the end of the call for sticking around. We should be done in about 40 minutes, so make sure you stick around for that. All right, let's get into it. So nothing's changed, but everything's changed. Because people always talk about how LinkedIn's changed, the algorithms have changed, how financial services has changed. Now, you might be thinking, geez, I don't know if my job's going to be around in a few years with all the AI access that people have to financial tools and information and apps and tools and all that kind of stuff. But the currency is always been trust. I remember doing these seminars 12 years ago, and I said, what's the biggest trend in marketing? And I put on the screen in big letters, big capital letters, trust. It's still the biggest trend, and it's only becoming more important with the likes of AI. That has not changed. What has changed, though, is how that trust is built, okay? So today, for all of those guys that are over 55, let's say, it's not earned through brochures and business cards. It's not even one in the boardroom. It's built on screens. These first impressions that we used to talk about, I used to go to sales seminars when I was a teenager, and I remember Wayne Berry, who's no longer with us, one of the biggest sales coaches in Australia. I snuck in the back, and he said, the first 7 seconds when you meet somebody is the most important. Firm handshake and look them in the eye. Today, that 7 seconds is happening online, okay? It's not happening in person. So it's really important that you take control of your digital footprint, your digital reputation, and LinkedIn is a big part of that. Why? Because if people Google your name, they're most likely going to end up on your LinkedIn profile if it's somewhat optimized, because the social media website has all these inbound links, there's all this activity and all this kudos with Google. Google have a score that they give websites which will determine how high they rank. And LinkedIn's score is 100 out of 100. So it's it's easy to get a profile to the top of Google. A lot easier than it is a web page. So you need to control what people see when they land on your profile. You don't want it to be a version of your CV, right? Because if you're targeting clients, you want to convert, visitors into new clients, then it needs to be worded towards them. This is way more important than your business cards. It's more important than your website in this context, right? Because if they already know who you are and they're Googling your name, they're further down the customer journey, okay? So then you build a relationship with people by doing, one post, one profile, one conversation at a time. Because it's not just people searching for your name via Google. It's also people that are active on LinkedIn. People are there to do business. They're there to network. They're there to recruit. They're there to make sales. They're there to increase their wealth, right? So whatever your, role is in financial services, there are people on LinkedIn looking to solve that problem, okay? Now, your LinkedIn presence if it doesn't signal instant credibility, then you're invisible to who matters most. Now, look at your competitors, right? Even after, this is still going on. 10 years ago, it wasn't surprising to me that most people were getting their LinkedIn profile wrong, but it's still like that. If you look at your competitors, most people just ignore it. They stick their head in the sand. Oh, yeah, I've got a LinkedIn. I don't do much with it. They might even say, oh, yeah, but I just get all these sales letters on there. All these, people contacted me and wanted to sell me stuff. Now, the quality of your LinkedIn will come down to the quality of your presence, your profile, how much credibility you build, and the quality of your network. It's a networking tool, right? So if you're connected with 100 people that aren't in your target market that you're never going to do business with, and they send you connection requests, they probably are going to be salespeople, and you probably will get a lot of sales letters. But if you take responsibility and you decide who you're going to connect with, who's going to be, like if you had 100 connections, who are they going to be? Let's say you wanted to target cosmetic surgeons, high income earners, business owners in the city you live in, all know somebody so they've got mutual connections, right? All of a sudden, that 100 people that you're connected to could be a lot higher value. And you could be the specialist for cosmetic surgeons. Think about that, right? I think one of the first financial services campaigns I did was for a financial services company. We targeted medical practitioners like dentists, surgeons, and lawyers. And it was so easy because the profile looked great. He's wearing a suit, he got a professional photograph, keywords in there, just looked so professional. Of course, these legal guys and cosmetic surgeons were happy to have a coffee with him. And he said, what are you doing about your super? Who's looking after your retirement planning and that kind of thing? And obviously it leads to conversations about doing business. And then the goal becomes to weed out the people that aren't ready to do business now, so you can contact them again when they are, so you're not ruining the relationship, and also just to shorten the sales cycle. How do you build trust quicker? And I've had experience with this, and I know I'm not in financial services. I've been in real estate in the past, but been in digital marketing. And when I started posting content, no one was watching. Like literally, I would post on YouTube, I'd get like 1 or 2 views. All my friends would say, "What are you doing that for?" And I didn't really have an answer, but I was listening to Gary Vee, in my on the podcast on Spotify, and he was saying, "Dude, this is the future, podcasting, social media." And so I kept doing it, kept recording videos, and I got better. And eventually, I started to notice, actually, all of my followers are coming from this one video. So I'm looking at the analytics. What is it about that video that's different? And then all of a sudden, started to crack it and started to nail it. Now, here's what changed. Okay. Instead of somebody coming to me and saying, "Hey, Nathaniel, we're looking to hire a marketing agency. We're considering 3 different alternatives. Could you put a proposal together? We're going to review all 3 of them, and then we're going to choose, who we're going to do business with." That actually stopped happening. It maybe happened like once every 4 or 5 months. Most of the time, the people who reached out to me who made an inquiry already knew who I was. They'd already consumed some of my content. They already saw me as an authority, already trusted me, and price became less relevant. And the more you build your brand, the more that's the case. So if you're in financial services, what's your point of difference? Well, you can start by having a brand, building a brand. How do you do that? Through posting content on social media, and LinkedIn is the best place to do it. It's where you're going to get the best ROI. I'm just going to jump into the comments here. Hey, Mohammed. Thank you for hosting this in financial services. The B2B generally selling on LinkedIn, 90% trust and 10% offer. It's about positioning, showing up consistently, leading with value before the pitch. Trust sells every time. It's well said, mate. I've always been a firm believer in building relationships. I think that, if you want to have more revenue, you have more relationships with the right people. How do you have more relationships, better relationships? You have more conversations. It's always been the case when I've either worked for other companies or in my own company, when I walk into the office, now it's just me and I've got a couple of support people. But when I used to have like a sales team, if I could hear people on the telephone and having conversations, I knew we were having a good month. Isn't that interesting? More conversations, more relationships, more sales. So focus on relationships. Too many people jump straight to sales. Your goal when you approach somebody on LinkedIn or you dive into the comments is not to make a sale. It's to have a conversation. Start a conversation. Conversations lead to relationships, lead to sales. Now, you want to drag that conversation offline. 82% of investors under 50 check LinkedIn before engaging a financial advisor. 82%. And what's happening with most financial services companies? Well, their clientele are all passing away, unfortunately. They've got this aging clientele, right? And so they do need to get this younger market on board, and they're making decisions differently, okay? 55% of decision makers say LinkedIn content directly influences their buying decisions. It's a lot. And 76% say that they trust a person more than a brand, So can you imagine when a company comes to me and says, oh, we really want to promote ourselves on LinkedIn, but we want to do it through a company page, not through our personal pages. Okay. It's like in marketing with two hands behind your back. Cool. But if you actually want to be successful, you want to build relationships. Nobody's having a relationship with a company, a logo, an office, a building. They're having them with individuals, right? And they're gone. It's the same thing when people who are hiring AI bots to call people, right? Might be a novelty for a little bit, but eventually somebody wants to talk to a human being. I mean, if you've ever made an inquiry or you've got frustrated about the phone company or whatever, and you end up speaking to an AI agent, you know what I'm talking about. One of our clients, a boutique wealth firm in Sydney, had zero digital footprint. They relied on word of mouth for everything, and unfortunately revolved all around the director, right? So, as they hired more salespeople, became more difficult. So it worked until it didn't. And referrals eventually started drying up. And there's a new generation of clients that wanted more transparency, more personality, more presence. So we had to build their LinkedIn from the ground up, profile, content, filming, getting them on camera, getting their message out there, because they had a brand. It just wasn't represented online. And guess what? They started getting inbound leads within 30 days, inbound leads, not to mention the outbound leads that we were getting as well, targeting really high income earners in their local demographic. And it wasn't nothing to do with having the best rates. Price is not important when it comes to building relationships, because they finally look like somebody that's worth trusting, right? If you go to somebody's LinkedIn profile and it just doesn't look professional, a lot of this is subconscious. There's a lot of research around this, but people make decisions very quickly visually, right, about whether or not they're going to trust you. And so your profile looking good, this just makes your job so much easier. Your prospects aren't just comparing you to other firms. They're comparing you to thought leaders they follow, creators that they trust, voices that show up with value and are consistent. Consistency is very important. You can only be consistent, right, if you batch create content. Very important. Batch create content. You have to create lots of content at once. Do not get up and think about what you're going to post for the day and post it. No. Schedule 2 or 3 hours and create 30, 40 posts at once. Okay. You can have a system for doing this. I'll explain it in a minute how we do ours. But just think about a system, because you got to show up with value consistently. It's no longer about being the most qualified, and it's not about who does the most content either. That's a race to the bottom, because with AI anyone can do that, right? It's about being credible and useful and authentic, and what makes you different than something they can search on Google. So you think of LinkedIn like a digital handshake, right? So here's the twist. People are shaking your hand before they even meet you. So your profile, that's the foundation of everything. That's your track record. If there's nothing there, or worse, if it feels corporate or cold, or you're throwing all these long words in there, people aren't going to read it. So when you write your profile or when you write content, right, the mistake a lot of people make is they assume people are going to read it. See, I do the opposite. I assume nobody's going to read it. And so then you're a bit more careful with how you word everything. The first sentence is very important, because if it's too long and people lose their place and it's too confusing and they have to think about it, they're gone. I try to make it 8 words or less, 1 line on a mobile device. I call it the hook. How do you capture somebody's attention straight away, nail the problem? You don't want to say, I started my career, graduating from UWA and then I did this. And then you've lost people. You need to tell them exactly what you do and who you help. In a high trust industry like financial services, this is mission critical. Like it's not optional, right? So define your point of difference or your niche and define that straight away. Let people know that they're in the right place, right? So if you're thinking, we'll get to LinkedIn eventually, this is your wake up call. This time next year, it will not be as easy to grow your brand, make sales, and generate leads to scale your business on LinkedIn. It just won't be. It's an absolute fact. It's growing so fast at the moment. The companies that I speak to now, I spoke to a fund the other day that was umming and ahhing about a proposal in December. And he said, just bear with me, we'll get around to it. I said, mate, you've missed half the year. This time next year, you won't be able to achieve what we're achieving with other clients, right? So you need some clear benchmarks. This is working exceptionally well right now in this industry, right? So if you're in financial services, here's what good looks like in 2025. First, engagement, right? The average engagement rate on LinkedIn, guess what it is? It's just under 1%. Under 1% across all industries, right? In financial services, it's actually lower because most people don't want to comment. And most firms are still posting corporate updates, boring brochures, white papers, or content that's been sanitized into oblivion by compliance or AI's written it. I mean, there's very few people that are doing authentic stories, but the ones that are killing it. Same as the legal industry. They're doing really well, okay? So they're getting, the good ones are getting between 3 to 7% engagement on personal posts. 0.5% to 1% on company posts. So if you're hitting over 1%, and when I say engagement, it's like the number of people that have engaged with a like or comment versus the number of views that you've got. So you want to be getting that over 1% at the very least. Okay, so you're outperforming most people. And then next you want to grow your followers, which is very easy if you haven't got many followers, because you just invite people to connect. On Instagram and YouTube, you can't just invite people to subscribe or follow you. On LinkedIn, you can, which is fantastic. They don't have to come and find you and press follow. You can send them a nice, customized, personalized invitation. Everyone loves getting an invitation if it's personalized, right? It's like if you're going to send it to their mailbox, right? You don't want some marketing, promotional thing that's been sent to everyone. You want something that's personalized and just for them and shows that you actually show an interest in them. You can send 150, 200 connections if you're getting a good conversion rate, connection requests per week. And so it doesn't take long before you start to build up an audience. And let's say you get to 5,000 people and they're all partners in law firms. I mean, every time you post content that's relatable to them and talks about the problems that they're going through, you're going to get good engagement. You're going to get good feedback and you're going to find out what content works really quick. The challenge that most people have is because they've just accepted whoever sent them a connection request, is that it's 5,000 people are so diluted, they're getting all sorts of feedback and all sorts of nonsense going on in their head. So the algorithm doesn't actually know who to show their content to. You make it really easy for the algorithm if you're targeted with your network and you keep talking about the same thing over and over and over again. Don't go too far outside your niche because the algorithm's learning. Think about it, right? If you talk about in startup investment opportunities, right? Startup investment opportunities, there's all these guys, LinkedIn have got all these guys here that they know are interested in startup investment opportunities. And there's you over here who post about it twice a week, every single week, without fail, right? And then there's another guy that posts about startup investment opportunities who also talks about health and wellness and a little bit about marketing. Whose content do you think it's going to show at the top of the newsfeed? It's going to be yours because they know that you're going to be giving them what they want. So it's not actually a case of getting more views anymore. That's not what we're looking to achieve anymore. The amount of people that contact me that have got 300,000 followers and even high engagement that can't pay their bills is, you would be absolutely amazed. It's not about more. It's about getting the right people, right? About getting the right people. Because if you want more, it's very easy. All you do is you go to TikTok or you go to Instagram and you find posts that are entertaining. And then you copy them or put your own spin on it. You can download the video and post it on LinkedIn and it will get lots of engagement, right? Because of entertainment. Everyone's got the need to be entertained. So you can get a lot of, people engaging with your content. But the problem is people that have the need to be entertained and are following your content to be entertained are not buyers. They're not going to do business with you, not necessarily. Whereas if people are following your content because they want to be educated, they're much more likely to invest. So have a think about that. You're much better off having 100 people that want to be educated about what you do than 10,000 people that want to be entertained. Good question here, Nathan. Can you give a brief example of what an authentic story would be, client stories, etc.? Great question, mate. Yep, I can for sure. I've got one here actually. Here we go. All right, so I'll just stand over here. So this was a client that I mentioned before that we did this capital raising for. They wanted to raise $1 million in a month. I thought they were crazy. They had an e-bike company, e-bike startup. And I was part of the effort. We also had Glide Agency, a phenomenal Facebook marketing agency here in Perth. And we managed to raise $1 million in 3 weeks. And the director invited us down to their office to have some champagne and celebrate. And no one was taking any photographs, eh? No one was like posting about it or anything like that. And so I said, okay, let's get a photo quickly. And there's the photo. You can see a bit of it. And it says, go team. I was sitting in a boardroom with my friend Ez from Glide Agency when Julian told me his plan to raise $1 million in 3 weeks. I thought to myself, this guy's lost his marbles or he's not entrepreneurial genius. Either way, I was in. This is what a marketing dream team looks like when they're celebrating 1 point whatever raised. Congratulations to the team. Fantastic to be part of the journey. We did it. Now, it's a very inspirational post, right? But is it about me? Have I said that I've successfully raised $1 million? No, I didn't. That's actually me congratulating the team and just being grateful for being a part of it. So that's an inspiring piece of content, right? Now, the interesting thing with that one was, we're celebrating a win. Inspirational content gets good engagement. Now, I didn't say anything about, what I contributed. I didn't say like what I achieved. I didn't even go into the results. I just, said I was part of it and I acted, I guess, grateful and humble. And I got 43 or 45, somewhere around there, leads from businesses that wanted to raise capital. Isn't that amazing? That's a lot of leads for someone just posting about a story with no call to action. Now, Julian, the founder, also got approached by the West Australian newspaper and they ran a story on his company. So he got PR from that and then he got rolled into another online publication. So we got all this added benefit just from doing that one post, which is pretty authentic, like just sharing a win. Now, if I hadn't taken that photo and posted that, no one would have shared the story, right? So it's just a huge missed opportunity. A lot of times we don't even see these opportunities when we're going around, living our daily lives. And it doesn't always have to be about your business. It could be about your client's business. That's a great way to share some stories. Look, what you got to think about is the problems that your clients are going through and write them down. Like, what are the biggest problems that your clients go through? What's the biggest frustrations that they have, right? And then you can talk about that. Talk about the problem, talk about the problem and how it feels and what are some quick wins that you can give them to develop trust. Talk about some client stories, talk about your own experience. And you can even talk about stuff that's going on in the news, stuff you're learning when you go to conference. You could post something after this and say, hey, I just went to Monday Night Live and this is what I learned and this is how it applies to what I do. Absolutely, you could be doing that. All of you could be creating some sort of post that's relevant to your audience about what you've learned here today. It's not about going viral. It's about staying consistent. There's a thing called the mere exposure effect. The more times that someone is exposed to your brand, and in this case, just your face and your headline, the more likely they are to trust you, all things being equal. That's just a mere exposure effect. So in the old days, like you need 3 exposures for somebody to know you enough, be familiar enough to like you, trust you, and buy from you. These days, it's more like 30 exposures, probably more like 40, 50 exposures because we're getting so much noise. So I think about social media, like how do I get 40, 50 exposures in front of my target audience that add value, that don't have a call to action, that I don't annoy them, that build that trust so that when they are ready to solve the problem, they choose me over the next person and they're not shopping around, right? So you want people to be reading a post and go, this person gets it, I should speak to them. So you want to explain the problem in very simple language, like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old could understand. Make it really simple, make it really easy to understand. The better you define the problem, they will just assume that you have the solution. You don't even have to explain what the solution is. If you define the problem well enough, they will assume you have the solution. Now, how often should you post? How often? Now, remember what I said about consistency. The most important thing is consistency. So if that means you post twice a week to start with, and you've got enough content to post for the next 2 months, and you can keep creating until you've got a big library of content, and then you can move to 3 times, 4 times a week. 4 times a week's enough. After that, it's kind of just, sure, it's good if, you can do it, but you start to see the value of the post drop. 4 times a week is enough to stay at the top of the algorithm. It wasn't like that 4 or 5 years ago. I was posting 5 times a day. Can you imagine? Like in between meetings, just drop and post, because that's the way it worked back then. There was no competition. You just get more and more exposure. But these days, you need to be quite good, right? So you need to think about the hook. The first 3 lines are very important. So twice a week minimum. Doesn't have to be every day, but definitely not once a month. And you've got to be consistent. So you stay on top of it. Now, if you go through a personal challenge, right? We all go through personal challenges, right? My daughter was been diagnosed with cerebral palsy a couple of years ago. I stopped posting. I was still posting, but I wasn't posting anything live or anything new. It was from my library of content. So you've got to have that hub of content ready to go, so that when when life happens, because it will, that you've got content that you can schedule and post up there. When I work with clients, we build a content hub of 100+ posts, and that just is there as backup, and we're constantly adding to it as we learn what works from the audience, right? So you don't want your client to be going searching for you when they're ready to act. You want to be top of mind. Okay, so they'll go with whoever's in front of them, by the way. Whoever's in their feed, adding value week after week, month after month. Best time to post, it depends where your audience is, but you've got to think about it like this, okay? LinkedIn is most active Monday to Thursday. Friday is like a little bit less, right? But it's weekdays during working hours, with the peak hours being the commute. So like 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, right? So because people are more active when they're at work, ideally you want to be posting in the morning, because you've got that whole, let's say you got from 7:30 till it drops off at 4 p.m. for people to engage. And the quicker you get engagement, the better the post will do. If you get a lot of engagement up front, post does better, right? Gets more views. So then you can take it one step further and go, okay, well, if I post earlier in the week, it means I'm going to get more hours of, LinkedIn being busy. If I post on a Monday morning, you've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before it drops off again. So in the morning, generally earlier in the week is the best time to post. But if you're doing it twice a week, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Thursday at the worst. Posting on the weekend is not a bad idea. Do you know why? There's less people on there, but there's also less competition, right? And I think it's always cool to post on there if you're going to do something a bit more personal. I've found that works well, just building that sort of personal relationship with the audience. But stuff that's like educational, a bit more serious, the best time to do that's Monday, Tuesday, that kind of thing. Friday is a good time to post, like team drinks, that kind of thing. So just think about the context of when you're posting. So don't chase the algorithm. You just got to chase your audience. So think about when your audience is online. You may have to test and measure some times of posting to see what works the best. Because if you've got an international audience, it's going to be a little bit different. What should you be posting? Okay, well, you want to add value, right? There's a few ways that you can add value. You can entertain, educate, inspire. You can provide information that people didn't know about. But authority content actually is what drives sales. That positions you as the expert. Personal content builds that relationship. It shows who you are and builds trust. But that insight-driven content that educates without selling, if every post you make fits into one of those 3 categories, like insight-driven, personal, or authority, you're already ahead of 95% of your competitors. Remember, LinkedIn isn't Instagram. Nobody's expecting polished perfection. They're looking for relevance, clarity, and confidence. It's not even a bad idea to deliberately put some grammatical errors in your posts, because everyone's using AI, right? If you're going to be using AI, you've got to make sure that it sounds human. You've got to get rid of all of the perfect grammar, not all of it, but like some of the perfect grammar. So get rid of those long dashes, obviously. You don't want those little space indents. As soon as people get a sniff of AI, you've lost. So quite often I will literally put a lowercase letter at the start of a sentence just to show that it's authentic, right? And like I could quite easily say I do that on purpose, and sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's not. But the point is, I don't get hung up on making it perfect, right? Perfection will kill your consistency goals. Okay, consistency. You got to be repeatable. So that's how you grow and generate leads. And so we're going to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes that I see financial services companies make. Let me just jump over here just to see if we've got any people in the comments. Gary's lost me. Gary's lost me. Can you hear me all right, mate? I use AI and automation for my clients, but sometimes manual outreach performs better, though it takes much more time. Change. How do you see AI? Look, there's nothing wrong with using AI. It's just about having the human behind it that's driving the AI. It's just a tool, right? It's just a tool. So you got to tell the tool what to do. And if you have a formula, like tell it how to create authentic content that uses your stories, then I'm sure it can save you a lot of time. Yeah, you use the dashes, right? Well, look, the dashes are. They seem to me like they're longer on AI. So I always just delete them and make them shorter, okay? Anyway, these 5 mistakes, will cost you trust. So let's break them down. Mistake number 1, posting like a company, not a human. Nobody on LinkedIn is stopping mid-scroll to engage with a templated press release. Companies always say to me, they go, oh, Nat, we've got all this content. We don't have a content problem. We don't need any more content. We've got loads of content. If your content feels like it was written by a robot or passed through compliance, or it's like designed like a white paper, no one's going to read it. This is social media. People do business with people. You've got to talk like you're sending a text message, like you're in front of somebody. If you wouldn't say it to somebody at the pub, don't say it on LinkedIn, right? It's a social media cocktail party. The news feed is a cocktail party. It's not a sales conference, right? Your profile is like your exhibitor's stand, where people come if they want to find out a bit more. But the news feed is where you're hanging out and you're networking, right? You're showing interest in other people. Mistake number 2, treating LinkedIn like a broadcast platform. It's not a billboard, it's a conversation. So if you're just posting into the void without engaging and diving into the comments and asking questions and getting feedback without replying to comments, without showing up for your community, you're leaving relationships on the table. Like when somebody comments on your post, right? That's the most important thing that you need to be paying attention to when you spend time on LinkedIn, because what you're doing is every time you reply to a comment, you're training your community to engage with your content, because next time they see your post, they'll remember that you replied to them and they're more likely to do it again. The problem is if you ghost them and you don't reply to them, they're not going to do it again. And I hate it when I see like people that have been posting content and they get like 2 or 3 comments and they didn't reply to them. Come on, guys, reply to those comments, and 2 or 3 become 5 or 6, and it grows from there, right? You're building relationships with people, and then guess what? If you reach out to them, DM them, or send them a connection request, they're going to accept because they know who you are. Well, they're familiar with you. Mistake number 3, talking about your services too early. Okay, ask questions, be curious. It's like proposing on the first date. Nobody wants to hear about your retirement packages or tax strategies before they even trust you. So ask questions, show interest. And if they do it, they are at the point where they're looking for a solution, just say, hey, let's hop on a call. And even on the call, so, the purpose of this phone call is for me to just find out a little bit more about, your situation, and then perhaps we can see if there's a solution that I can offer. Mistake number 4, ignoring your profile. Your profile is your landing page, right? There's a guy that I coached who was focusing on videos, and he all of a sudden went viral with his videos. It went from like getting 300 or 400 views to over 1 million, right? And he's like, oh my God, dude, I got all these views. And he didn't get any leads from it. What a shame, right? Because he wasn't prepared, because he didn't get his profile right. The problem is if you get all those views and all that attention and your profile's not converting, it's a waste. So the profile is the most important thing. It's the foundation. Your profile has to convert visitors to leads, to your landing page. If it reads like a resume instead of a value proposition, you're missing the biggest opportunity. So it's where you tell people who you help, how you help them, make it personal, personalized, be authentic. Have a look at I just rewrote my about section. It's very personal. I've got rid of a lot of the stuff that I put in there about awards and testimonials and stuff like that, because the way it's written is very authentic. So every line should be intentional. Like, it shouldn't be in there if it's not in there for a reason. So just be strategic with it. Like, it amazes me that people spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on a website, but won't get their profile professionally copywritten and optimized. We do offer that as a service. If you want to find out more about that, it's not expensive at all. It's the foundation of everything we do. We don't run any lead generation or content marketing campaigns until we've optimized somebody's profile. Mistake number 5, compliance. Look, I get it. Financial services is one of the most regulated industries out there, but hiding behind that is not the answer. The firms that are winning right now, they've worked with compliance to build guardrails, and within those guardrails, they're actually encouraging people to post bold, helpful human content. You can give your team a library of content and stories and parts that they can customize, right? It's not about saying less, it's just about saying it better. So you don't tell people what not to do. You help people by giving them what to do. Invest in LinkedIn training. Get your boy in there to train them on what to do, how to do it properly. Everyone else is acting from fear, and then you're showing up, and you're getting familiar, and you're landing clients, right? Anyway, if these 5 mistakes sound familiar, don't worry. Most firms are still catching up, but you will know better. And you can do this in 15, 20 minutes a day. This does not have to be hours and hours on LinkedIn, right? Now, I want to talk to you about LinkedIn lead generation, okay? Because, and I know, we're going on for a little bit longer than expected, but LinkedIn lead generation is a huge, huge, huge opportunity, right? So look at this. LinkedIn's top 7 industries: IT, healthcare. Number 3, financial services. Isn't that interesting, right? And this is an example of how the numbers could work. Okay, let me just show you what Maureen said. So Maureen sells investment. She sells investment properties in Australia, but from Singapore. She's in Singapore, right? And she said to me, "Oh, Nathaniel, it's a shame that LinkedIn doesn't work for B2C, because essentially, I'm just targeting individuals." And I said to her, "Why don't we target CEOs that went to university in Australia but live in Singapore?" And what she did is she reached out to them and invited them to a property seminar every month. And this is how the numbers work. And she's still running this strategy today. She's been running this for like 7 years or something. We reach out to 500 CEOs in Singapore that went to university in Australia. So CEOs typically have a high income, and they've got some tie with Australia, right? So they might be interested in Australian property. Sent them all the connection requests. 277 accepted that invitation to connect, right? So this is all free, by the way. You send them a connection request, customize it, 277 accept. And then those people all got a message to invite them to the property seminar, and 42 out of 277 showed up. We haven't spent $1 on advertising. This is powerful. Those 42 people came from a personalized message on LinkedIn. They're all CEOs. They all went to university in Australia. They're the perfect target market to buy property. And she's running this every single month. So all of a sudden, going from like running big 1-page ads in the Straits Times in Singapore and getting 1 or 2 people show up, now she's got a system that's scalable that doesn't actually cost anything on ads. It's just, we were doing it for Maureen to start with, and then she's doing it in-house now. Have I got this comment still showing up here? Okay. So what a great opportunity. The one thing I will add to that 3-step process is you want to engage on people's content as well. That makes a big difference to conversion rate, right? So that's how you actually generate leads, right? And the content's very important. I want to show you just a quick structure before I give you the free month of Condo and we wrap up. So this is a content format that you want to be looking at, right? So at the start, you've got a hook, and then what I call a rehook, right? So the hook is the first line. Try and keep it on one line. So this is obviously not a financial services post. It's it's a LinkedIn one, but stop posting LinkedIn content nobody reads. Here's how to hook them in 7 seconds. So that's what I call a rehook, which is like leading into the content, or it might contradict the first sentence. But the point is, you've got a 1-line sentence that's 8 words or less, and then a shorter sentence. And if people just looked at that on its own, those first 2 lines, they'd have some sort of understanding of what the rest of the post is about. because they're going to have to click that see more button to read the rest of the post. Okay. And then you want to keep the sentences short, break it up into 2-3 lines maximum per paragraph. It's great to have a list, 1, 2, 3, very easy way to get people to scan through the content and make it really easy to read. And then at the end, always include a call to comment, right? A call to comment. What's a call to comment? So it's basically like a call to action, but the action is, oops, where are we? Oh, I'm down there. So the action is to comment, right? So rather than telling them to do something or buy something, you're telling them to engage on the content. That makes sense. All right, dude, there's a question here. Do you find that you can post too much? Would this dilute the impact of your posts and messaging? Look, yeah, it actually works like that these days. Like if you post more than once a day, it will decrease like you won't get as many views on each post. Overall, you might get more views. That's why guys like Stephen Bartlett and Gary Vee post every 4 hours, because, okay, yes, it might, reduce the amount of views that each post get. But if you're doing like 5 or 6 in a day, overall, you're getting more attention, right? So it's just about the quality. Like, can you maintain the quality? Can you add more value with more posts or not? I think, staying to 1 a day is good, like no more than 1 a day. And just schedule. If you've got more content to post, then just schedule it. Then you don't have to worry about always having content ready to go. Okay. When are you creating a LinkedIn AI bot to help us write scripts like this? I've got one, mate. Send me a DM. I've got a GPT. I'll send it to you. I give it to my clients. It's called Write My Post. So there you go. I'll give it to you for free, mate. Thanks for being here. Monday Night Live. You know how we do. All right. We're going to wrap up very soon, right? But just I think we just need to be clear about something that you do need a strategy, right? Most people post randomly, cross their fingers, hope for the best. The firms that I work with, whether they're chasing, 50 grand clients or 50 million portfolios, they use the 4-step system that I just talked about. Well, it's find, connect, and engage, but then you also have that extra step between find and connect when you're engaging on people's content, right? And that increases your conversion rate from, like, when I was just doing find, connect, engage up until like start of last year, we were getting about 30% conversion rate from the connection request to people accepting. Once we started commenting on people's posts in between, it jumped to 88%. So it's almost like 9 in 10 people are accepting the connection request. Huge. When you engage with that follow-up message, you want to drag the conversation offline with what you guys do, financial services, right? You want to build a relationship. It's just like when you're online dating, right? You pull the conversation offline onto a phone call. You're taking the relationship to another level. If you email somebody, you LinkedIn message somebody, you call them, you text them, it's like you've built a really strong relationship and you haven't even met them yet, right? Obviously, like, if some of you will have a sales process where you'll meet them, some of you will have a phone call. I would suggest making the first phone call 15 minutes, no longer than that. I've seen a lot of clients that make the phone call, like, just end up like going, "Oh, we had such a great conversation." They say, "How long did you talk for?" "An hour." "Well, what did you talk about for an hour?" "Oh, we got the kids in the same area, and he supports the same footy team," and like they're getting way off track. Keep it short, 15 minutes. Like, sure, build a bit of rapport, but the goal is to find out a bit about them so you can structure some sort of solution, then set a second appointment, because you don't want it to go on too long. Okay, give people too much time to think about it. You'll talk yourself out of the deal. First, 15 minutes is not a big obligation for people. You be respectful of people's time. Right? Everyone thinks, if I give away a free 45-minute consultation, I'm giving away so much value. You're delivering more value if you do the same thing in 15 minutes, because you're being respectful of people's time. One of the things my clients always say to me is they love how I do short meetings, quick meetings. They're respectful of their time and don't blabber on. It's nothing worse than somebody who, you're paying a retainer to, that wants to make the meeting go on longer than it needs to just because they can justify their fee, right? This is why lawyers are going to be struggling soon, right? You can have the best services in the world, but if you don't have a trust-based reputation online, it doesn't really matter. Like, I mean, you could be really good at what you do, but if nobody knows how good you are, then it really doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter at all. I'm just going to drop in the comments here, guys. Have we lost the video, buddy? Oh, I can see it. We might have done. Let's have a look here. Let me see if I can fix this. We're coming back. Come on, guys. What's going on here? We've lost the video. Well, I was about to wrap up. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. Oh, what's happened here? Sorry about this, guys. Strange. All right. Well, look, we are going to wrap up. I'm going to drop in the comments the free month to condo. I'm hoping you can still hear me. And yeah, I'll have to see you guys next week on Monday Night Live. We've got a bit of a tech issue here. I've got on for 50 minutes. I've got on way too long. So I'll see you guys next week. Stay legendary. No signal. I hope you can hear me. You can't hear me, can you? Let's see if I can make sure I've got the mic on here. Oh, the mic's on. We can hear you. Sound is fine. All right. Well, we're going to have a visual less goodbye, guys. Have a great week in business. I hope that was valuable. And do DM me your feedback if you've got any questions. And I'm going to drop the free month to condo in the chat here. So thanks for being here, guys. Stay legendary. I'll see you next week on Monday Night Live. Thanks for watching or listening in this case.